On the Earth, there are magnetic lines of force that flow through the Earth. They're not exactly north-south, but we'll just assume that they're north-south.
We have imposed a fee for recreation, also on developers. In lieu of land for recreation, we've imposed a $1,000 per dwelling unit fee for recreation.
Hello, I'm Brian Madden. Welcome aboard. That was Marilyn Coffey you just heard. She's a town supervisor right here in the town of Esopus, and she's going to tell us all about a very special piece of land where I'm standing right now. And when we come back in just a moment, we're going to meet Miles Gordon of the Miles Gordon Great Hudson Sailing Center. He's going to show us how to get a bearing on where we are right here on the river. Here we are on the creek, the Rondout, of course, heading out with Miles Gordon of the Hudson River Sailing Center. Miles is about to give a lesson in navigation, but unbeknownst to me at the time, cameraman Scott Healy was just rolling his tape deck, while Miles first gave a history lesson. Let's listen.
In its heyday, photographs at the gallery show first the sloops and then the steamboats triple parked in here. Yeah. From the beginning all the way up past here, past Rondout and up to Wilbur. Busy little town. Have you spoke with any of the historians about this area?
Well, we talked a little bit with Marita, but she was talking mainly about the steamboats, steamships.
Yeah.
And I guess, what's his name? Schwartz.
Steve. Yeah. We do these sunset cruises every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and people are coming from New York and Capital District and from France and England and Texas. So any historian that's giving a presentation, I'm right there grabbing everything I can get. And so I've picked up quite a bit about this area, which amazes me. Things like there was a city of Rondout whose population at the turn of the century was larger than Kingston is today.
Really?
Yeah, 85,000 people.
In the city of Rondout?
Yeah, which is no longer here. And it was all shipping related, and in the wintertime they were harvesting ice, and I mean, it was a terrible slum. It was the cheapest housing you could get, and everyone crammed in just to get a place close to work. But it was quite a town. There were 3 steamboat companies running to New York 3 times a week in Pankaki, Rondout, and Wilbur. And you could catch a morning boat at 6 and get to New York by 11.
And what put an end to all that?
Highways, trucking,
the
roads.
automobile,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Okay, so much for history. Now we're at anchor somewhere off the shore of Port Ewan. We're ready to find out about making a fix.
Anchoring on the river is one of the nicest experiences. It's a mud and clay bottom, and the anchor never drags.
Really?
Yeah, whereas when you anchor in New England waters, your anchor can just pull up and you'll find yourself floating off somewhere in the middle of some commercial channel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Especially if you're asleep.
Or dragging your anchor across a bay into some $500,000 yacht, and if you drag, you pay.
Yeah.
So, are we on there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is a navigation chart, and it tells you everything you have to know to find your way safely in any body of water. And in our basic navigation course, we get people familiar with all the symbols and how to read a chart so that they can go anywhere, pick up a chart, and know where they can and can't go, and how to find their way around, what the aids to navigation are, and the landmarks that they can spot.
Now we are where?
We just came out of the Rondout Creek, and there are 2 bridges that we left astern, and the vertical clearance is listed on the chart because a sailboat with a tall mast needs to know these things. And I guess once a month we'll see a sailboat come flying in from Canada or the Great Lakes for a rest, and they'll leave about $2,000 worth of electronics tumbling down. So vertical clearance is given. And this also shows a jetty, which is submerged at high tide, the dotted line. Here's the symbol for the lighthouse and the green #1 marker. The jetty is submerged at high tide, and that's another hazard. And many boaters leave part of their underbodies on the jetty coming in at high tide and thinking...
And that would be because they didn't pay attention to this map? That's simple?
Yeah, that's simple. And the chart will give you a wealth of information. The white area is deep, and I don't know if the camera can pick that up or not.
Yeah.
The blue area is shallow water. The buoys are aids to navigation, and it tells us primarily where the commercial traffic will go. And so when we see a large boat coming around the bend on the horizon, we know where it will pass us and head upriver. And so we know where not to run out of wind, where not to anchor, where not to stop for a picnic. But we use these aids for our purposes to pinpoint exactly where we are.
Okay, and where would we be where we are anchored now?
We just came out of the creek, and the jetty is right behind us, and the lighthouse is right there. So we are in about 13 feet of water in this blue area, just about here. And
so just a few feet over there, it's down to about 39 feet. Is that what I see here? Okay.
Yeah, the river was cut by glaciers and huge glacial boulders cutting through, and so you'll get these tremendous shells of 52 feet to 1 foot.
My goodness.
And it's something that the navigator on the boat or the sailor has to know about, so that when your depth finder tells you that you're in 52 feet going toward a shoal, that you should know how much time you'll have to fiddle around with before you're aground. I can pop that on for you.
Yeah, the depth finder, is that... Okay,
that works on sonar, and it'll stable off in a minute. It'll repeat itself sometimes in fresh water. The sound goes down, hits the bottom, bounces up, and sometimes, if the water is very clear, it'll go twice. So...
Seems to have locked in 16 feet.
Yeah, it likes 16. And right now, these soundings are at mean low tide. Here's 13 and here's 16, so we're somewhere in there. And having a depth sounding is also a good way of figuring out where you are when you have radical differences. Of course, when you go to 1 foot, it's easy to know where you are.
Well, how much under are you? How much under is the hull?
This boat draws or needs 4 feet of water to float. It's got a 4-foot keel and then a board that goes below that another 4 feet. Now the board can come up and down depending on which direction you're sailing. Going into the wind, we like the board down, so we need 8 feet of water. But we have the luxury of, if we do hit, we can pull the board up and slide right off. Yesterday we were coming down from Saugerties, and there's a spot on the chart that indicated some very shallow water passing right over Hogback Shoal. We have a little 4-foot ledge there. And we were sailing across, and the class said, well, we better tack out of here. We're getting to 4 feet. And I said, nah, we'll push it. And sailing along, the boat went, whoops, but slid right off and continued right down.
So the class had learned its lesson, but
you
hadn't.
Don't trust the captain.
Okay, now we're going to do what today? We're going to find out about using a compass.
Yeah, we'll be using a bearing compass, which is one of your basic tools for navigation, and parallel rules, which are your other tool, a pencil with an eraser, very important, and perhaps we'll get into using the dividers. But in planning a trip, there's a series of preliminary skills that you should use, which is called deduced reckoning. You plan a course line that you're going to sail, and then you follow the ship's compass along that course, and that should take you pretty much where you want to go to. On the river, it's quite easy. You know that your course must be between the two shorelines. But we do use a bearing compass on the river for other things. And at the end of deduced reckoning, all of your figuring and approximations come down to getting an exact position. And it's done with the bearing compass, and it's called a fix. Once you have a fix, you know exactly where you are, and you can then make some decisions about how accurate you were about figuring current, steering, things like that. And the way we use a bearing compass is to point it at a charted object. And on the chart, we have, especially in this area, many objects that we can choose from. We have 3 antenna towers to the south of us, which are down there. We have another antenna, which doesn't look like it's charted up there, so we'll use that. We have several buoys out there. We have red 16, which is right here. And we have that antenna on the eastern shore, which is right there. And we have a church spire right there.
Oh, yeah.
By using any of those, we can point our bearing compass at the target. And I'll use the 3 antennas right now. And I line up my 2 lines and just hold it steady on that target. And I try and read what the bearing compass says. And it says 200 degrees. Why don't you take a look? And it might be a little different from where you're holding it, but that's okay.
Okay. You just line up the 2 yellow. Yeah, 180. Okay. It's just a little off 200.
Okay. We don't have to be all that accurate. As you go along, you get more and more accurate. It's a skill that just keeps increasing and takes less and less time. So I'll just make a note that we read 200, and that's a magnetic bearing because this compass and all compasses are magnetic. On the Earth, there are magnetic lines of force that flow through the Earth. They're not exactly north-south, but we'll just assume that they're north-south for here.
This has a switch on it. What's that for?
Night light.
Okay.
A very, very faint night light, which we won't need
All right.
today. On the chart, there's a compass rose. The outer scale is geographic, the inner scale is magnetic. And we find a line which is 200 degrees. Here's 180, 190, 200. We take our parallel rules, put them on 200, and we bisect the compass rose right through the center. And we read south because that's where we're going. That's 200. We open the rules up until we get to our towers. And we draw the line roughly where we are. That's a 200-degree bearing line on those 3 towers.
Okay.
Got that? We can even mark it 200 am for our purposes, and you can even put the time 11:26. So at 11:26 we were here. Somewhere along this line. Now we could be here, could be here, 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 anywhere along that line. We do know somewhere along that line we are at 11:26. The next thing we want is a bearing compass. It's lovely to have a 90-degree angle, but we can go off 90 and get a little farther. How about shooting that antenna right there?
The TV antenna? That's what it's called on the...
Yep, it's probably broadcasting your program.
Let's see, I see southeast. Would that be 130?
Each line is 5 degrees.
It's right between 150 and 120.
Well, that sounds like 130. I'll shoot it from here.
135.
120. 130. Looks real good. Okay. And we'll just make a note. 130, so we don't get confused. if someone asks us the time or something. And if you'd like to find 130 on the magnetic scale.
Okay, 130 would be...
And we're reading the inner scale.
Right here?
So this is 120, and
I see.
on this it's increments of 10. So that's 130 right there.
Right there.
You set your parallel rules on 130.
This way, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that you're bisecting the compass rose.
Well, we need a little more room here.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is normally done at the Navigator station right below, and he or she yells up to the helmsman different things about courses to steer.
All right, so
now,
130.
Now the trick is to open the compass rose without smashing the parallel rules till you get to that TV tower, which is right there. And you can walk them so that if this is 130, this line is 130, and then we can close them up again and walk them some more.
Oh, I see.
Till we get to there.
There it is.
Okay. If you'll draw in that line.
Right here?
Yeah, but we know that we're not on land, so...
Oh, yeah, okay, right here. In other words, cross the lines.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right.
That
so that's our exact fix.
is 130, and we took that at 1126. Where you get two intersecting lines, you have a fix. This is exactly where you are, and from that, you can tell the helmsman, or if you're the helmsman at the same time, you know where to steer in order to continue along your way. That's the essence of coastal piloting. So in 5 minutes, you've become a navigator.
Now that we learned how to make a fix, let's hear about how a small business appears to be on a pretty fair financial course.
Well, the sailing school began in '78 and kept growing from there. My early experiences were probably at City Island, and we had a summer home at Oyster Bay. My parents used a little sailing dinghy as a playpen for me on the beach. Most of my sailing has been on the river, and then we branched out and we opened a program in the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean, and this year we'll be going to Key West and establishing permanent winter quarters there. We've been full-time the last 3 years and have a roster of 2,600 graduates. And in the last 3 years, we became nationally accredited. And we're one of the few sailing schools in the United States that can guarantee that at the end of our basic course, people can solo a 25-foot sloop.
Did you know the town of Esopus is harboring, literally, a secret? Yes, Esopus has its own jewel, and it lies along the Hudson. Town Supervisor Marilyn Coffey fills us in about a very special beach.
We're trying to not develop. We're trying to prevent from being developed. It's, of course, our town beach. It's our recreational area. We have just required from the developer who's building right next door an acre of land and a scenic road as, say, a pound of flesh in order to allow them to develop there. We're trying to keep this area for the people of the town without developing it. I think it's more important that we keep the town beautiful than that we have the additional tax base.
Right now we're in the fall season and not much going on, or is there?
Some very exciting things. During the fall, of course, as you can see the duck blinds behind you, and we have hunters, duck hunters who build their blinds and put out their decoys, and they hunt here. In the winter, we have ice boating. This area here, it does freeze very nicely, and the ice boats are lovely to watch. The sails are beautiful and colorful, and people can come down and watch the ice boating. There are activities that go on. We have the yacht club right next door, and they party all winter long. They have weddings and many celebrations of that type. So it is a beautiful, active area all year long.
We're sitting right behind, or right in front of an area here that you say the town would like to get hold of.
That's part of our overall plan for this area. We had a grant from the state this year of $23,000 to study the area and to make plans. And we've just submitted our plan, and now there is what they call mortar and brick money coming. And that money is to implement the plan. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to buy that section of land that you see going out into the Hudson River. It's called the Slatesburg Spit. And we're presently making an offer to the owner of the property.
What kind of money are we talking about?
I'd rather not say until we've made the offer. I'd hate to have a developer grab it out from underneath us.
Is it into 7 figures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it would have to be. Then what would you do with it?
What we would do with it, there's one area of it where the water is quite deep, it's 40 foot deep, and we would put in a boat launching ramp or a boat launching site for the residents of the town of Esopus as part of our recreational program for the year. We would also put in a launching site for small boats, for the people who just want to put in a canoe or a rowboat. There could be fishing, picnicking, any of just access to the Hudson River and to the Rondout Creek.
At the top of the hill as we came down to the beach, we noticed a sign up there, and it's just filled with the word no. You can't do this, you can't do that. Is this for just town residents?
Yes, it is just for town residents. We have a permit sticker, a little sticker that's a permit, and it's a service permit. It allows people to use the landfill or the beach or any of the town facilities. It's $1 a year, a bargain at any price, and it's $1 a year, and that's keeps it for the residents of the town of Esopus who pay for it.
Now, that is, in effect, public access, but it's only the public of the town of Esopus.
Right.
Do you get any complaints from outlanders, outsiders who would like to come in?
Yeah, we do. And we've instructed the lifeguards and the personnel during the summit to tell them, sorry, you have to have a permit, and we send them up to the town hall. We deal with it there. We don't expect the college-age kids who are our lifeguards to deal with it, but we have the people directed up to us, and we deal with it there. And actually, they understand. They'll go to Kingston Point Beach if that's where they're from, and allow our people to have their beach.
So this is actually a local treasure that
Yes, it surely is.
you're coveting.
It surely is.
And if everything works out, you'll have that other area behind you. And this could be even more choice as far as people who would like to buy property around here.
That's the thrust of this whole program. We could allow, I don't want to say any old junk, that's not fair, but we could allow any development, just open it up and allow the developers come in and do as they please. But we feel that land in Westchester County or land in Scarsdale is far more valuable than land in the Bronx. And only because they've been very careful with their planning and very careful with their zoning. And we're trying to emulate them. We're trying to do exactly the same thing and make the property that's owned by our town residents now more valuable, as well as to future investors in the town.
Also raises taxes, doesn't it? Or brings in more tax money, I should
Well,
say.
yes, it does, ultimately, and a lot of people don't understand that. They say, well, you know, just let them build and build, but we'd rather have the quality of building that we're looking for.
When would you say all of this began, this renewed interest or this major interest now in the town of Esopus?
Within the past 2 years, there was very little action in the way of even a desire to develop in the town of Esopus. And the planning board and the town board thought about it, and the environmental advisory board, and we decided that we can go either way. We can really make our zoning rules very tough and very restrictive, and make the town of Esopus what it should be. It really is, as you look around you, it's the most beautiful town that there could possibly be, and therefore it should have a beautiful type of growth rather than something that's less desirable.
Other towns in the Hudson Valley have gone to moratoriums. They just can't handle all of the construction and the progress that's going on in their areas. Do you see that possibly here?
I don't really feel that it's necessary here, because we it wasn't too late for the town of Esopus. We had our planning and zoning in place when the development started, and we are about to enact 5-acre zoning per unit, dwelling unit, along the same river, but down in the West Park, Ulster Park, Esopus area. That's where all of the religious institutions are, Mount St. Alphonsus and Marist, and before, again, it's not too late. They're still owned by the churches, they're fine, and I hope they own them forever. But if they should sell them, a developer could not put up condominiums that would line the waterfront. It would have to be just individual homes and mini estates, so to speak.
Another sign up top of the hill there, George Freer Memorial Park. Who was he?
George Freer was a former supervisor of the town of Esopus, and it was actually through his efforts that the beach was developed. The land was purchased in 1958 or 59 from the Kirkendall estate. The Kirkendalls owned just about all of the coastline of the town of Esopus, the Rondout Creek. They were shipbuilders, they were railroad people, they owned brickyards. And we bought the land for $1,000 for the almost 4 acres that we have here. And the health department almost immediately decided that the water was not suitable for bathing, for swimming. So we just kind of held on to our land, and Roger Mabey was the supervisor at that time, and they continued to raise money to develop the beach. They had in connection with the Champlain Hudson celebration, they had a boat ride down to New York City, and they raised $1,000 to pay for the land. But then when the health department kind of put the kibosh on things, nothing happened. And after George Freer was supervisor, he immediately followed Roger Mabey. The health department lifted their ban, and it was through his efforts that the beach was developed, that the fill was brought in, that the grading was done, the barbecues were put in place, the picnic. I guess he was the first supervisor to actually open the beach, and the first day that it was open for swimming. And that's why it's cool. And he passed away at a very untimely death. He died a very young man, and it's just a way of honoring him and recognizing him for his efforts. We named the beach the George Freer Beach.
So unless you live here in the town of Esopus, or you have a friend who does, it isn't likely you're going to be able to come here and enjoy this beach, and that's why it's so special. Thanks for coming aboard this time, and we'll be back again next week right here on the river.